create a name tag. On your name tag, you're going to include your name, your content, your grade level, and one interesting fact about yourself. Thank you.
Wait, I was. That interesting fact.
You don't have.
No,
You have a couple interesting facts about you, Ms. Stone. So I would love to know everything about you.
DJ Stoney
Do
Song?
you want a vertical 10 or a horizontal 10?
You know what? Express yourself creatively, Caroline. However you would like to make your 10. It's a box.
It will be near tomorrow.
Surprise. Like not too long ago, we showed a significant interest in critical thinking. So this session is designed around our critical thinking skills. Okay? So let's go over our norms before we begin. Keep an open mind, ask questions, make suggestions, share the wealth. If you know another way or if you have a better strategy, make sure you share it with the group. We're all experts because we're all teachers. And have fun, laugh. It's pretty easy reading. All right, so I want you guys to read and reflect on this statement. So don't put your box back over here if you guys can pass those around. All right, I see most of us are wrapping up. Does anybody love to share their thoughts? Caroline? I'm gonna call on you first. What are your thoughts on this statement?
I wrote down that it's something I agree with. Many older students, like previous years, our generation, our generations, have trouble taking like that problem-solving energy past the classroom, expanding it out of the classroom, and that the truly successful ones were able to, and now they're the ones with the good jobs, or they became teachers.
Right. High fives to that part. Would anyone else like to share their thoughts before we move on? Selena? Yes.
So I read it as education is no longer, or things are no longer confined. That word stood out to me. Especially problem solving and experiments and exploration. It can move cross disciplines, including English. And I wrote that learning does not mean something was necessarily taught, rather something was experienced.
Snap. Yes. Anyone else before we move on? Good. Let's go.
I kind of went with the pro-con model because I do appreciate and I like the look of the current learning model because it gives kids an opportunity to explore life after school more fluidly.
Mm-hmm.
But I have noticed it can also be overwhelming to those that come from schools that still follow the old model.
That's true. Like like you guys know, I'm kind of trying to be more digital, like more so I'm pretty much all digital. And my kids are freaking out because they're used to writing things down. And it's like, nah, because we're kind of getting into a world where paper is about to become obsolete because it's kind of hazardous to our health, pretty much. So, good thoughts. Good thoughts. Snaps for everybody.
I don't know, I feel that paperness. They requested a worksheet one day.
Mm-hmm. My kids said this too, and I was like, you can get texts on paper. Everything else, you're gonna have to work it out. Okay? So let's get into exactly what is critical thinking. Evaluating information gathered or generated by observation, experience, reflection, reasoning, communication as a guide to belief or action. Basically, what does this mean? We need to teach our kids how to think critically, meaning taking one point and connecting it to the next. Identifying a problem and then creating solutions to that problem. Improving their critical thinking skills helps them to make those connections in order to take the skills that we teach them, put them together, and perform to the best of their ability. Okay? So we're going to get into a little bit of, I don't like to talk too much, so I'm going to give you guys a chance to actually learn a little bit more about it. So I found this article called Obstacles to Critical Thinking. So this is just, I know that when we're thinking about like how can I incorporate this into my classroom, we think about the obstacles and the shortcomings that we may have in actually trying to implement this. So that's what this article is about. So the first step is I want you guys to read this article. I'm gonna give you about, I'm gonna set my timer for 3 minutes. You guys can peruse the way you do.
To them. So to build those life experiences within the classroom without having them to fall outside. Like, to create fall outside. Right? Those are the right words? Yes. Awesome. Next.
Hey, World of Illusions was about how students are constantly presented with information from the news media, in the classroom, films, internet, TV, radio, newspapers. So kind of giving them the tools to analyze and process all of this information because you're constantly being presented with these illusions of things that are not entirely true or real, such as food, quality, bias, behavior.
That's cool because my kids and I were actually reading this speech from 1924 called Shut the Door, but they were also looking at speeches from President Trump and President Obama. So, and they're like, I'm having them to make like connections between the texts or pick like two and talk about how they're connected because I'm trying to build them up to where I need them to be. So they're getting like, I'm doing it in little pieces. So I think that's important to also like kind of show them that, hey, this is what they're saying, but in real life, kind of what's actually happening.
Yes, and to piggyback awesomely with the students being inundated with so much bad information, that's exactly what making the start is about, is how easily bad ideas can become fact. And they gave the great example about Thomas Edison about how he's the inventor of the incandescent light bulb. Not so much. He just perfected an already invented invention. So, but because it's readily available, it's easy, it's salacious, you can write a movie about it, it makes more sense. Now it's become fact. It's not a fact, it's a fact. And then they gave another example of that about the beliefs of when America goes into war with different countries of why, and then after years later we find out, yeah, it's not exactly what happened.
And then that section goes on to say people have gotten into a state where they're more willing to believe what they see or hear from someone else than they are from their own personal experience. They talked about, it was a lady it was in Jordan during a suicide bombing. Someone had set off a bomb on at the ground level of the hotel, and she was on the 8th floor. She heard it, she most likely felt it, but she didn't realize what had happened until she saw it on TV. It's like, oh, I'm in this hotel. I didn't know what, I thought it was just a sound. And then in that next section, it goes on to basically an extrapolation of what he said earlier. They have an unwillingness to question their own beliefs. So they'll be fed information by other people, and rather than fact check it or look deeper into it, they'll just automatically assume, oh, they're telling me that this is good for me. They can't have any ulterior motive. And the beginning of critical thinking is to look beyond that. Like you said earlier, the what next?
Yeah, I was just, thank you, you made my point for me. I was just about to tie that back into what Selena said earlier about it's not just about what's coming next, what are you thinking, okay? But this also will make better people in our society. Because there's a ton of people who don't know how to put A and B together. Or they see something on the news and they take that at face value. Well, critical thinking makes you break apart, makes you break things into parts and look at the parts as opposed to just looking at the whole and accepting things readily. So we're gonna do a quick activity and then we're gonna close out. The activity is, I want you guys to create an anchor chart and you're gonna brainstorm together. And you're going to think of some possible obstacles that you may face trying to implement critical thinking in your classroom, okay? So I provided you with chart paper and you have some supplies there. So I want you to go ahead and start discussing. You can go ahead and put it on the board today.
I didn't want to miss that.
No, it's from yesterday, doesn't matter. But yeah, you can, what? I wrote this yesterday, it's not even right today, I just was on change it.
That was me yesterday.
It was like, you know what, it's bored, it's just gonna be a board today. I was like, not right.
It was close.
It's the same side.
Guys go up there with Selena so she doesn't feel isolated and she feels like y'all are a part of her group.
I absolutely wonder if consumer culture is affecting the way kids perceive critical thinking, because they're always fed stuff.
They are. And they
Through the
accept,
socials media.
but they accept everything that they see.
Through the medias.
Don't
They
question
do.
anything.
But like, so I gave the juniors a prompt and it was like, about hate speech. Like surprisingly, a lot of them think that, it's supported by the Constitution, there's nothing wrong with it.
Oh yeah, I had that, they must have just come from yours, it's like, no, it must have been just before yours, but it was like, you can say that, but you're not free from those consequences. If someone will object you because you call them a
That's what
slur,
they said.
then they have every right to defend themselves, because you verbally attack them, that's
Mhm.
slander, which is not protected by the Constitution.
I
But
saw
yeah,
yesterday during the
We had
debate,
that argument today.
like how you
Yeah.
talking about they'll
Both
take it at
was
face
wrong.
value.
She didn't think it.
During the
Good job.
debate, I had a kid say that Einstein and Tesla and the people we think of great thinkers were not formally
Medium.
educated. He was like, really?
Edison wasn't,
It-
But excuse me, yes,
Oh.
the issue.
Einstein wasn't. Yeah, Albert eventually did.
That was still bad offs. Still.
Pretty much, he was like any patent that was like around.
He's around.
Didn't he have
He had
a
trouble
patent
reading.
factory?
Yeah,
Like you just had a bunch of people in there inventing stuff and if they came up with something.
I see Selena coming in writing some great things down in her little
Oh,
chart.
sorry.
Sorry.
Why
No,
do you
it's a cheat.
Think it forward. Oh, issues. Consumer culture,
It's a good way to say
socials, medias.
Mm-hmm.
Get in the socials.
readiness to conform.
Ooh, that's a good one.
That's the
Low
word I was looking for.
self-esteem
Oh
that
man.
is a good one.
caused by the socials, medias.
Okay, so now how can we combat these things in our class? Like, how can we make sure that our kids aren't influeed by these and they really try to tap into that critical thinking?
Watching the news with them.
Press
Yep.
press fact check.
She put me on CNN 10.
Fact check.
Fact checking.
It doesn't matter where you get your news as long as you check it.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I did the same thing because I got the idea from one of you guys. We put the news on we did a 20-minute and there was like 5 different news segments. And they were just like, there's an impeachment process going on. It's like, we need to stop. You guys don't even know what's going on with Ukraine.
Oh, no, they don't.
They don't.
They don't.
So they were super interested in that. And then 7, no one came on and completely forgot about that. So
I have to talk, after we finish with the party, I have to talk to you because repeat me. About something my kids showed me that they said you told them about. I almost threw up everywhere this morning. We'll talk about it later.
Yeah, figure out about this.
is it about global warming?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Oh, this is one of those times where the little teacher would provide authentic experiences through learning.
You mean real world examples?
Yes, real world examples. This is the way you said it. This is the way you said it.
I had to drop into my teacher. Oh, wait, I got one of this.
For consumer culture, we can do reflections of feelings when using or without media. Reflections on social media.
Just social media in general, habits.
How does that make you feel?
Oh, first of all,
Does looking at those pretty people make you feel bad about yourself? Stop looking at them.
Okay, look at
You're
me.
feeding into their narcissism.
what does Hawk always say?
Social emotional learning.
Social emotional learning, like our colleague Mr. Hawk is always.
But he always says it like
He
it's
replies
one
for
word.
everything. Everything is social emotional learning.
Social emotional learning.
Yes.
Why do you rise
One
so close to
word.
the edge, Stone?
Because that's where she lives, on the edge.
You really trying to
He said something about shit, boy.
Did you read it?
I read, we were together.
Great job on your chart, guys.
It's beautiful. Can we have the
So
stars?
I love it.
No, wait, those tears need to be blue.
I can't afford Miss Stone, but I need to pay you to do my bank trip to my room.
I
But
know,
I can't
it's
afford
like-
you.
I love it.
I'm too broke.
Okay, so
The teachers have the-
let's have, since Miss Stone wrote it, would someone else like to share your thoughts?
Sure.
Thanks.
So, I'm gonna just explain the chart is what we're doing, right? Just wanna make sure.
Where you gonna start?
We're gonna start over here,
Okay.
because we read from right? Bet. All right, so our critical thinking issues that we found, the issues we found were biased news media, lack of experience, consumer culture, and just a readiness to conform in our students. We felt that these things could be alleviated by fact checking and instituting how to fact check, where to fact check, what is the process of fact checking. The lack of experience can only be fixed, can't say that. What we can do to help that, authentic learning, these are real world examples, experiences, trips, guest speakers, however we can get them to the real world, we will. All right, consumer culture, we're gonna reflect on social media, how does it make our students feel, and if those,
Feelings are relevant.
there we go, if those feelings are adverse, what can we do to go to the right side, right? Readiness to confirm, we're gonna do social emotional learning, all right? We need to build up our self-esteem. We also need to build up our ability to think for ourselves.
You guys did a great job.
I feel like we need to have more arrows.
I like it. I support it. Alright, I'm ready for you guys with the, but I do want to talk about a few things. Getting critical with critical thinking. Critical thinking has become education's bullseye. A target that if achieved will cue up a chorus and win us universal approval. So our kids will perform better if we enhance their critical thinking skills. So we need to think of ways to like show them how to problem solve. For example, with me, I'm trying to be more digital, which drives me crazy because the kids, I don't understand how you can access everything else that you're not supposed to. But if I ask you to log on to something, you can't figure that out. So part of that is me, well, what do you do next? So when they ask me for help, I just start asking them questions. Like, how do you get to that? How did you get to it yesterday? So you have to start thinking of little ways to kind of like, even at the smallest level, because a lot of our kids can't put 2 and 2 together. It's miraculous, okay? In conclusion, critical thinking is when the brain is active, making connections to the material and applying original thought to the concept. It's a difference between struggling to remember and struggling to solve, okay? So, there is a survey here that I will have